Alright, welcome everyone. This is Tactic Angel. This is an off week for Wednesday Night Gentlemen, at least the official podcast. Midget Radio is on a vacation to some tropical island somewhere, so hopefully he's having a good time. I thought I would use this time to do something a little bit different. First of all, gotta sort out this audio issue. This is the third attempt at trying to make this work right. Hopefully this is coming in loud and clear, at least 12% better than last week. So what we're going to do, we're going to call this a Tactic Angel Chat. Or, if you want, you can abbreviate it as ATTACK. Mostly what I'm going to be talking about this week is a little bit of politics and, in a sense, math. But also, not really math. So, don't get too worried about it. So I hear you ask, Tack, what the hell are you talking about? Well, that's a great question. A few weeks ago, NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick made a bunch of news for the first time, at least in several seasons, as he sat on the bench during the National Anthem. I'd say this started something like a debate, but really, like anything on the internet these days, it's really pretty much a shouting match. Then, a few days later, a political cartoonist named Matt Davies published a cartoon in which something resembling Donald Trump says that America is not great, to the cheers of a crowd. In a second panel, something somewhat representative of Colin Kaepernick says the same thing to a crowd of boos. Boo! So I say something resembling or representative of because I don't really think the drawing's that good. And that's probably just the style of political cartoons. You can find a link to the illustration in the description and draw your own conclusions on whether or not this artist has any talent or political savvy. Perhaps this is meant to show the great social disparities in our nation that Donald Trump, some white dude, said that America's not great, and a black sports ball player couldn't say the same thing, though Kaepernick is admittedly of mixed descent. My guess is the artist is trying to say something a little bit deeper here. So, how does this all relate to math? I know that's what you're thinking. Please get to the part about math. Well, alright, faithful viewers. First, let's take a look at Donald Trump. Here he's quoted as saying, America is not great, which is at least partially accurate. What he usually says is something closer to, make America great again. And from this, we can probably tell that America is not great, at least in Trump's opinion, at least not right now. But, at some point, it probably was. So, here we're going to get into the math. We all remember charts, right? Let's pretend, in this case, that the x-axis, which goes from left to right, measures time. And then the y-axis, which goes up and down, measures greatness. So this is a bullshit scale, so we don't need any numbers. But what we'll say is that towards the top is great. Then there's good. Somewhere in the middle is probably okay. Then beneath that is bad and terrible. So presumably our x-axis is going to start somewhere around 1776. Declaration of Independence time. But I don't count on everyone knowing that right now. Maybe, some people would prefer to start it somewhere before that, like when America was still a colony, and I'm sure it was like a really great colony, but I'm not going to label it that way. I don't care. I just don't care. Sorry. So, if I were to say, make America great again, and I will parenthetically add, I am not saying this, close parentheses, My guess is that the line of American greatness would look something like this, rising throughout the years until it peaked somewhere, and then falling off. I could propose another line too, which I think would follow like this. We'll either call this a moral relativist's perception of America, meaning that while we probably wouldn't choose to live in early America versus modern America for many, many reasons, if we had to, and it was 1800 say, we'd probably choose America versus a lot of other nations at that time. We still would have had a great deal of opportunity and freedom, at least relative to the rest of the world. This line could also represent the America, fuck yeah contingent, which may be a little bit less intellectually vigorous, but there's still plenty of people who believe in it, and it is a catchy song. Now, you may argue, these lines only go down into good. And granted, if it's not great, it could be pretty much anything on this chart. But my guess is, based on what I've heard from Trump, and from what I've seen from the people who go to his rallies, they're not exactly saying that America's a terrible place to live, just that it used to be better. Now my guess is, and this is only a guess, but most of the people who are in one of these two camps are probably not specifically interested in certain historic realities, like Jim Crow, slavery, the limitation of the right to vote to people who only owned land, or maybe the abolishment of modern medicine. There are going to be a few crazies out there, but my guess is that most of these people want a more robust middle class, an America where people who want jobs can find them, and where our country is respected by our allies, or at the very least, feared by our enemies. So, if I were to take a look at where Kaepernick is, by comparison, how would he draw this line? Well, honestly, I don't know, but I can only guess, based on the things that he said, maybe I'd draw a line something like this. Right? Well, no, probably not. Colin sees himself as the victim of pervasive racial crimes, or at least he's somehow attached to them. So, he's not going to bother to stand up, to respect the flag, anything it stands for, etc. He has been quoted as saying, and this is a quote, I'm going to read it off just as it was said, "I am not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color." So we can all probably agree oppression is bad. It's not even okay, it's bad, it may be terrible. Take your pick. I guess it depends how oppressed you are. So we'll draw the line something like this. Or actually, why don't we leave a little bump in there in the middle to denote the end of slavery, wherein something like 350,000, mostly white dudes, died under the stars and stripes in a war largely because of the issue of slavery. Don't want to hear a whole bunch of nonsense about it wasn't really about slavery, it was about whether or not the state had the right to secede from the Union, or whether the South could legitimately continue its social economic policies given the imbalance in slave states versus not. I don't care. If we're on Family Feud, survey says, ding, 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 78 points for slavery. That doesn't sound right. Anyway, part of the reason why I'm making this video is because, in this case, I think the artist is trying to manipulate people. I'm not saying he agrees with what he's drawing, but what I do think is that he knows he can make a quick buck off of the press out there, at HuffPo, at Vox, at Salon, any of these internet rags that just kind of drum up clicks and feed to a certain base. Now, it's a little bit dishonest because they're going to be trying to persuade people one way or the other based on this thing, either that what Colin's doing is completely legitimate, or, I don't know, Maybe they're trying to convince people that what Trump's doing is legitimate, but I kind of doubt that. The other reason I do this is because I think that these two statements involve differing levels of stupidity. Now, you won't see me wearing a Make America Great Again hat or t-shirt anytime soon, but considering the explosion in poverty over the last 8 years, the low levels of workforce participation, a slew of government scandals, the general weakness of a dollar, even though that is intentional, it does hurt a lot of people, several major foreign policy defeats, and the diminishing presence and influence of America throughout the globe, it may be easy to see why people feel that America is less than it once was. I probably missed some stuff too, like crazy stuff that would bother me, like everybody getting a frickin' participation ribbon, because I'm still of the mind that there are winners and losers in life, and only everything in the world teaches me to think that way. Then you have an NFL player pretending like sitting or kneeling during the national anthem is going to create some sort of national emergency. If he had done it once and then said he was doing it for awareness, which is something that he said he's doing it for now, then maybe, yeah, he'd be able to bring some attention to questions about legitimate use of force and all the other things that have saturated the news for several years now. But he didn't do that. What he said is that he was going to continue to sit on the bench until he had decided that America had turned another leaf, had somehow changed, had behaved itself to his own personal satisfaction. Now, what Colin's talking about is theoretically a matter of systemic racism, something that has existed for centuries and is oftentimes seen as something that's subconscious, that can't even be controlled by the people who are involved in society, which is all of us, honestly. So, this has been around for centuries, and what are the chances that he's going to be able to reasonably stand up and observe the national anthem during his career? Or maybe his lifetime? What are the chances that everyone, much less a guy whose job is to alternate between throwing a ball and handing a ball to another person, is going to be able to see a black person and a white person, or for that matter, two people of any color, involved in some sort of altercation and see them as just people, rather than seeing them as two people of different races? I mean, that's the whole idea, right? That we would eventually be able to just embrace the fact that, sometimes people don't like each other because they have personal problems, or because they were doing something they shouldn't be doing. And that's just how it went. So, basically what I'm saying here is that he's painted himself into a corner. There's not a real great chance that anyone sees him as the arbiter of truth. And if he stands up, someone's going to tell him he's a sellout. He'll probably say it pretty loudly, too. But maybe I'm being too cynical. Maybe he really did think he could make a difference. Maybe he was thinking that Obama would be watching SportsCenter on Monday. As soon as he saw it, he said, "Holy shit, national emergency, state of emergency all across America. Call Congress back into session. It's all hands on deck. We are not sleeping until we solve this as a nation. We must make this football player stand for the national anthem." Right? Right? Like, that's a reasonable thing to think would ever happen? Not really. And if you listen to his statements, they don't make too much sense next to one another. You might say they're a little weird. Before this year, Colin Kaepernick is most likely known as being a guy who lost the Super Bowl. And if you knew him for anything else, you might have known in 2014 he was fined a bunch of money for dropping the N-bomb on another player because he has a deep, long-abiding interest in the well-being of black people and people of color, as he's pointed out. Supposedly, he also says he respects the contributions, though I think what he may mean is sacrifices, of men in uniform. Then he goes on to say that cosmetologists are more highly educated than police, which is a pretty baffling statement. I kind of get the sense, and this is no slight to cosmetologists, but I kind of get the sense that he may overestimate the intellectual rigors of cosmetology school. Seriously though, I love my hair. I love cosmetologists. I love everybody. Maybe he just meant the military. Maybe he means that only the military, not police, deserve his respect. So, why are these two guys saying these things? Well, both Trump and Kaepernick have something that they want. For Trump, and this should be pretty friggin' obvious, he would like to be the President of the United States. Kaepernick hasn't been playing very well, and several people have suggested that this is just some sort of stunt to keep his job. I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. I can't see into this dude's heart. But the whole thing has worked out pretty favorably for Kaepernick at this point. Probably what worked even better in his favor is that it is financially pretty hard, if not stupid, for San Francisco to try to fire him at this point. Kaepernick currently enjoys being oppressed by an average salary of about $19 million, much of which is guaranteed, which means that San Francisco will have to pay him whether he plays or not. Now, the only way that I can see being oppressed by $19 million is if you print it out in singles or maybe quarters and placed it on my chest. That may be a problem, but for most of us, it just doesn't match up. So my guess is that's probably why a lot of people don't particularly care for what he's doing. Here's a guy who's been raised by two white parents who adopted him. He's been given great opportunities. He's reached a level of fame, and he has clearly great wealth. It's hard to see all the oppression. I'm not going to ramble on about this all night. It's about as much as I care to talk about it. I'll leave you with one last thought, though. The optics on this are pretty bad. History tends to remember the people who fought oppression, not so much the people who say they'll kneel before it. So, that's all I've got. Hope you guys enjoyed my rambling. I'll see you again on our next Wednesday Night Gentlemen Multimedia Empire official podcast, episode number 3. Till then, take care.